and welcome to Catechist Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.catechist.com. I am Jason JROCK Houston. We're talking with singer Lisa G today. Now, Lisa, could you share with the folks a little bit about your background? Because I'll be real honest, until your publicist sent me a press release about you, never heard of you. I checked out your new single, which we're going to be talking about, and you got some pretty cool special guests, and I got to say you're a great little discovery because I was digging the tune. So let's tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks again for having me on today. I really appreciate it. So my history is kind of probably a little different from most of the people you interview. I have actually been in the business, but in sort of different ways.
Okay.
Again, I'm sure you can appreciate the fact that back in the day, people didn't have access to the music industry executives and professionals the way they do now. Back then, of course, you really had to know somebody to kind of get in or be discovered accidentally by something really important. But nowadays, people kind of have the option of figuring out ways to get out there on the internet. And that's kind of what happened to me. And I got really, really lucky in terms of my being able to reach some people who ended up being able to help me in a really great way. But so my history is classical.
Oh, wow.
And I started out, my mom was a classically trained pianist. She played Carnegie Hall when she was 17. And she really fostered our interest in music. And when I say our, I'm talking about my brother and my sister and myself. We're all musicians in our own right. But I was in orchestras growing up. Again, a classically trained pianist, so I did recitals and all kinds of things like that. But that background allowed me, especially with the theory, to learn how to write music.
Wow.
And of course, writing was something that I really picked up on my own. One of my biggest kind of hurdles that I had to kind of try to jump was that I absolutely hated reading music, and I hated the theory aspect of it.
Oh, wow.
But I had enough sort of natural ability that I was able to kind of go around that. And so I taught myself how to write. I wanted to play guitar in the worst way, but my mom would not give me lessons for that, not allow me to have them, so I had to kind of figure it out on my own. And I literally made her buy me a guitar when I was like 10 years old, and I figured out how to play it on my own. And this was before the internet, was available, so I had to really kind of do it by sounding it out. So that's kind of my kind of musical history.
Interesting.
From there, I ended up doing things like, getting into cover bands, and probably the biggest invention that helped me was I had a friend who had a recording deck called a TX 3340, and it was this huge, like 80-pound recording machine that allowed me to record more than one track at a time. So my thing was, my biggest interest about that was doing vocal harmonies. I loved vocal harmonies. So I learned how to ping pong these tracks, and I ended up doing like 16, 17 vocal tracks. I mean, they were choral and choir oriented. That was the most fun part of it for me. And once again, I was in cover bands and that sort of thing, but my love was really for writing music. So I started at a very young age writing. I wrote my first song at the age of 4. Wow. It was 4 words, 4 chords, and I was 4. So I had 3 4s going on there. But from there, I really enjoyed writing music, but of course I love collaborating, and it was such a strange journey in terms of how I ended up here.
But it's a great story because for many reasons. I mean, you take you mentioned being a fan of like wanting to learn to play the guitar and stuff, and you look at a legendary guitar player like Eddie Van Halen, who sadly passed last October. But I think many people will be amazed to learn. Now there's a guy that could not read a lick of music, but yet look what he was able to do with that guitar, during his lifetime, and now he's looked on as an icon,
I had no idea, actually, that he didn't read. I naturally assumed because he was such a virtuoso that he absolutely knew. But that's really
I mean, that just kind of goes to prove your point, that, I mean, depending on how talented somebody is, look at what they're able to do,
Well, I tell you, I appreciate that, because a lot of people, it was very difficult for me because I had a piano teacher, not my mother. She actually got me involved with someone else. But, it's hard to teach your own kid, I would imagine, because the answer would be no. I wouldn't go out. I don't want to sit here with you. But But with that said, I didn't want to sit with my piano teacher either. So, but I did. She literally forced me to stick those lessons out until I was 14, and finally I just said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. But at that point, she figured I had enough theory where I could kind of work around whatever I needed to do.
Wow. What an interesting story. But let me ask you, what's the name of your single that's currently out?
It's called Love Thing.
Love Thing. I got to tell you now, typically, Lisa, I talk to like people that are typically like hard rock and metal musicians. But here's the thing, like part of I was reading your press release that was sent to me, and I seen people that play on the track, and that's part of the reason I want to talk to you. But then I go and I check out the song, and I'm like, you know what, it's not exactly rock music, but it's kind of got a rock beat to it. It's upbeat. I kind of dig this, and I'm like, wow. Kind of like I said at the top of the interview when I answered the phone today when you called. Wow, what a great little discovery this is, because I mean, the one track, what I can tell you, like again, it's a nice upbeat song. It really kind of rocked my world, if you will, and it got me left with the feeling, you know what, I want to hear more from this person.
Well, that's real. I appreciate that, and I have to tell you that song has actually been around in my life for many years. The way I write is something will pop into my head where it will be a chunk of a song.
Yeah.
And usually it's just musical. And eventually, years later, I may actually find some words that fit into that. And that's how the song starts. So this one, actually, the chunk started when I was 14.
Oh, wow.
But eventually, I think I've done now, maybe this is the fourth version of this song that I've recorded. But Carmine Appice took this song and produced it. This is my favorite version of it.
Yeah.
He just made it hookier and just interesting. I was so impressed with his ability to produce, and of course I always knew he could produce because the person who wrote the Rod Stewart song, Do You Think I'm Sexy?
Of course, yeah.
He wrote Your Young Turk. So he's kind of had a history in terms of, and of course all of his own bands, Cactus and Vanilla Fudge, etc. He is an amazing producer. But I thought, this song's pretty hooky. I can't imagine what he could do with it. And wow, what he did with it just blew me away. I was just so thrilled with what he did with it. It was amazing.
He's an amazing musician. Carmine's one of my all-time favorite drummers. I mean, he's probably one guy that's been doing it the longest. I mean, he's been around so long that he's a guy that influenced John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. I mean, that just says it all right there.
Yeah, and that to me was just wild, and that is an incredible claim to
And then
make,
what I dig about Carmine too, besides his being such a physical player, is like you said, if you look at his the list of people he's played with over the bands, everything from Vanilla Fudge to Rod Stewart to Ozzy Osbourne. In fact, Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy's wife, kind of wanted Ozzy to kick Carmine out of the band because of the fact that they don't really want anybody in Ozzy's band that's as big of a player as Carmine. Carmine was a little too big, they thought, and again, he's just a super talented guy, super physical.
Yes.
So now, how did you hook up? Was it a matter of you just reaching out to him, or what was that process like?
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting story. I prior to this had been working with a drummer named Kenny Arnoff.
Oh yes, another legendary.
Yes, another guy, and I got lucky with him. I tripped over him at a drum clinic just because he's an interesting personality.
Oh yeah.
And I was not a drummer, although I am now. I pick up instruments pretty quickly. But having said that, I met him, and he agreed to work with me after he heard some of my music. It's one of those deals where, if you deal with somebody who's a professional in the industry and you say, oh, I can write, I can play, you usually get a smile. Sure you can.
Yeah.
I believe you, but you have to kind of prove yourself. And so he said, well, send me some material and we'll see what we can do. And sure enough, he liked what he heard. And he brought James Lomenzo into the picture.
Another talented guy, yeah.
Yeah, James Lomenzo is an amazing bass player. And in one of my favorite bands, Black Label Society. But so between the two of them, they really helped me over the 3 years that I worked with them, and I continue to work with them. They really helped me sort of develop my musical style. style. And Kenny, of course, has a classical background as well, so he could speak the language to me, and I understood.
Oh, great!
But after having worked with him, and we did maybe 40 songs together, that's by the time I got to Carmine, and I tripped over him through one of these deals where you can get in contact with one of your favorite celebrities, and I was able to do it.
Oh, wow!
It was sort of convoluted and complicated, but finally I was able to get through to him because he's also obviously he's a legend.
Yeah.
And so by the time I did, I had that same sort of conversation where I said, "Well, I'm a songwriter and I'm a musician," and he said, "Okay, well, let me hear some of your stuff," and because I had said, well, I've worked with Kenny Aronoff, and he goes, oh, you did a song or two with him? And I said, I've done 40 songs with him. He goes, oh, okay, let me hear what you have. And so I sent it to him. He said, yeah, I can work with this, and I'm, interested in developing your music to make, first of all, he wanted to make my image sort of match my music.
Oh, yeah.
But he saw the potential for me to do something that was a little heavier, a little more Carmine-oriented.
Yeah.
And so that's really what he did. But I think people don't really understand just the depth of what Carmine is capable of doing. It's not. He's a heavy drummer.
Oh yeah. I mean, just beyond what he can do on the beyond what he can do on the drums. Like you're saying, I think a lot of people, because he's a drummer, a lot of people don't realize. Wait a minute, he's a producer. He has written hit songs. Most people don't think of drummers, unless you're talking about Phil Collins or Roger Taylor from Queen, maybe as a songwriter. But he does everything. And Carmine, I had a chance to interview him a few years ago, and he was sharing with me that I don't know if you're aware of this, but years ago they used to have what was called a Tower Records Drumathon, and that was and that was Carmine.
I'm not familiar with it, yeah.
And that was Carmine that started that event, and he was telling me, the whole point of that was, they have these things where guitar players go and shred and stuff. He goes, there's no such event like that for drummers until this Drumathon thing, and it became more of a corporate thing, and they had to change the name because they didn't want to pay Carmine or whatever for it, but it was a thing where these drummers would just come and it'd be like a drum off, and he's a guy that started all that, so it's amazing. And you mentioned Kenny Aronoff, another great, super talented drummer. And he's played with, if you know anything about Kenny, he's played with everybody from like John Fogerty, John Bon Jovi, Cinderella, and he's one of these guys that is always getting gigs, always doing sessions and stuff.
Yes.
And so you get these kind of players on to work with you, first of all in your case, because especially like you said, you're typically more of thought of as a classical musician, at least you think of yourself that way, and you got kind of these guys that are more like hard rock oriented on your tracks, and then just you telling Carmine, hey, I got Kenny Aronoff to play on some of my tracks. That even though people don't know you that well yet, Lisa, I think a few years down the line, you're going to start to get a reputation, because like I said, just this one song, Love Thing, nice catchy little tune, and so like, what's the plan? Are you just going to release these songs like a track at a time, or are you working towards a full-length CD?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's exactly what we're going to do. But we figured this is kind of a, sticking your toe in the water. Let's see what happens with it.
Yeah.
And so Carmine and I are actually working on some other songs. And again, he's taken these songs. And also another thing that you may or may not know is Carmine is also a singer. He has so much natural music ability.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I also love harmony, so he and I share that love of harmony.
Yeah. And
because of that, I have a very sort of straightforward 3-part kind of a thing, but he took that 3-part thing and he just produced it and made it something that, again, it's just unexpected and it's interesting. So he's doing that with all my songs that we're working on together, and we're working first towards an EP, and then we're going to do probably a full-length CD. We're just going to keep it going. And so I have several different music projects going right now.
Wow.
I actually have the stuff that I do with Kenny, which is less heavy oriented, than the stuff that I'm doing with Carmine, which is my big focus right now. This is the dream that I've always had, is I wanted to be a rock musician.
Yeah.
So we're working toward that. Now, obviously, Carmine's vision of this is not just for me to be a rock musician, but he just feels hits. He gets that.
You have the
so
potential.
He'll take that piece of music and turn it from something that may be somewhat stable but a little pedestrian, and he'll turn it into something super hooky and like hit oriented. So that's what he's trying to do. But the other project I'm working on is also a rock opera. So I do all different phases of music, but right now this is my focus, is the stuff that I'm working on with Carmine, the heavier, and we're hoping to get into heavier, like rock oriented stuff, not necessarily metal, but heavier rock.
I mean, it sounds like you're on the right move in the sense that you keep going along that path. You know, are you still there, Lisa?
I am.
Okay, I'm sorry. You go along that path, though. You know, and the cool thing about it is, you could be one of these artists. Maybe kind of have a crossover between pop and rock and everything in between. Because again, the people you're playing, and James Lomenzo, I tell you, what a find. He's another one of these guys, like, really the best kept secret. I mean, he's played with everybody, like you're saying, Zach Weil. People first probably became aware of him in the 80s in the band White Lion.
White Lion, yeah.
He's played in Megadeth, and he's the one guy from White Lion that's really gone on to have kind of really major success. And so James, very much like yourself, he's one of these guys that, he can play like in a metal band such as Megadeth to a pop band like White Lion, and he's really one of those virtuoso bass players.
Yes, he is, and he's also another type of musician too. He plays everything. He plays guitar, he sings, he writes in his own right. So, and I remember when Kenny, how I got to James was when I started working with Kenny. I'm also a bass player. But,
oh wow!
Admittedly, I'm not great.
Mm-hmm.
I just literally picked it up because I was in a cover band and we needed a bass player. So I was like, I can do this. Boy, it was a chore. But at any rate, I'm competent, but I'm not great. So I was working with Kenny, and after like the third song, he very kindly said, Lisa, I know this bass player. I was like, okay, I get it. Fine. Bring him on. So he said, here's James Lomenzo. I'm going to introduce you to him. And I looked at this guy's history, and it's like, again, Megadeth. It's Slash's Snake.
Oh, yeah.
All this heavy stuff. And I said, maybe I should talk to him first, because this doesn't really seem to jive with what I do. So I talked to him, and I said, why would you want to work with me on this? Because I look at your history and I see that you're just such a heavy. He goes, oh, I love the heavy stuff. He goes, but I love what you do too. He goes, I love all kinds of music. And you never really think of someone, say, in a metal band as somebody who might be interested in something a little bit different. And I think kind of the common thread with all of my music is my guitar player. And he's a guy named Don Mancuso. And Don worked with Lou Gramm in his band, the Lou Gramm Band, for 30 years.
Wow.
And, but he has a sound that I consider to be sort of the sound of my music, and it goes across all those genres. And if it weren't for Don, I would not be here right now talking to you.
Oh, wow. Because
I really had kind of given up on thinking that I could pull off anything other than classical music, because I could never make it sound right. In spite of the fact that I played guitar, it's just like, this doesn't sound right. And of course, back then, I didn't have access to guitar players.
Wow.
So now, I remember when I started working with Don, and I call him D. It's, I've known him actually for many, many years.
Wow.
But, we had never worked together. I had met him one time, and then I didn't hear from him or talk to him for many years. And then I tripped over him again on the internet, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm doing music professionally. I was like, oh, well, maybe you could help me. And I'm thinking, I wonder if he can actually turn my music into something that sounds more rock-oriented. And he absolutely stepped up, and I was so thrilled with that sound. So he and I have been working together since 2010.
Oh, wow.
But because of that, I finally got the confidence to really sort of continue writing rock music. And I really give him so much credit, because he's an amazingly versatile player, but he's also really kind of diverse in terms of what he can do. Yeah. I'll give him a song thinking, this is going to sound exactly like the song he did for me last time, and he surprises me every time. Everything he does, there's a cohesion between all the music, and that's from across the board, from my sort of ballads to my pop music to my rock music to my musical. And my musical stuff that I'm working on is absolutely classical based. As a matter of fact, one of the songs in it The song, it's a musical called The Viking Queen. And
Oh, wow.
the title song is based on opera, literal opera, and classical guitar. So what he did with the guitar is he turned it into almost a Brian May piece. It was, he just did it amazing. And again, the guy just surprises me. Every time I turn around, it's like, wow, he can do classical. He can do pop. He can do rock.
Wow.
He can do anything. I did some sort of funk music, and I was actually so thrilled with what he did in terms of using, a wah and all kinds of. He just, again, every time I turn around, he surprises me. So I'm really lucky to be able to work with all these veterans. I mean, these guys just know their stuff.
I mean, it's
Kenny
really
to Carmine to Dee to James. I'm just the luckiest girl in the world at this point.
It really is like a rock and roll salad. And I mean, you talk about a rock opera you're working on. How cool is that? I mean, you even go back to the 70s. I mean, and the Who, had Tommy, and that was very revolutionary and different for its time. Before that, you go back, everything Alice Cooper's ever done is pretty much a concept album. But I mean, people just love that stuff. And I got to tell you, on your track. Love Thing, you're just killing it vocally. So I mean,
thank you.
I mean, is that something that's long? Like, I think you're really, to my ears, anyways, you're a great singer just based on the one track. Like I said, I kind of want to hear. Did you finally, after all these years of writing and recording, kind of figure out like, okay, I think singing is going to be my thing?
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, it's kind of funny you mentioned that. When I was young. Like in high school and teenager stuff. I grew up in a town called Oak Park, Illinois. Oh, okay. And there was a park there called Scoville Park, and it's where everybody, is kind of met up and hung out, and, kids our age would bring their guitars, and I couldn't play guitar at that time. That's, as a matter of fact, why I learned, because it's like I was a pianist, and it's like, well, I want to play in this music too. I can't drag my baby grand piano down to Scoville.
Yeah.
I got to figure something else out. And it was literally just to accompany my voice. That was it. That's the only reason. Because singing was my first love. And as I mentioned, when I got that TX 3340 from my friend, it was all about creating these layers of vocal harmonies. That's kind of my thing. And that was, as I said, I don't know if you know Carmine's history, but he had a ton of music that involved lots and lots of. He was a great singer. And he has such an interest in it, but he also, again, the production of it, he kind of took me out of my mode that I had been in for many years and changed it up. And it really got me to kind of open my eyes. And I remember thinking, I'm going to have to really hand myself over to him musically because he's a producer. And I'm not going to be able to control this. This is going to be him controlling it. So I literally had to let go, and it was very hard. It was like, a mother bird letting go of her baby birds. I just like, what's going to happen here? But I thought, I have to do this, and I have to let him take control. And wow, I could not have been happier.
Yeah, and see, Carmine, interesting thing about Carmine, if you look at any of the bands he's ever been in, I mean, most of them, center around him as a drummer, which is kind of a unique thing. But he kind of finds a way to fit into every band he's ever been. Like you said, everything from, Rod Stewart to Vanilla Fudge. I mean, even your track, that's quite different from what fans know him for. But, you also mentioned a guy like James Lomenzo. I mean, he's typically known for playing in hard rock and metal bands, but I mean, there are many guys like that say, okay, well, that's what I'm known for, but I'm a living, breathing musician. If if a certain gig comes along and maybe I get offered to play with a Madonna or somebody who's a little more of a pop star,
right.
I'm more I'm willing to do it, because I'll take the gig if you're willing to pay me. Why not?
Right.
And I think
as a matter of fact, people don't realize that he's with Fogerty.
Yeah.
And that's how he and Kenny, well, I'm sure they have another history. They're both from the, LA area, and they've known each other anyway. But they're in the same band, and so it's easy for them to, communicate. And once again, I'm so grateful that, again, to have this kind of network where I'm able to meet people through other people, and as the result of knowing. So, but kind of circling back to the very beginning of our conversation, where you had said, what do you plan to do with this? And nobody's heard of you. Well, there's reason for it. And it's because I was really kind of all on my own. And now I have all these this musical muscle. I got Kenny Aronoff, I got James Lomenzo, I got Carmine Appice, I got Down Mancuso, I've got all these guys who are not only supporting me musically, but each and every one of them has supported me in my efforts to kind of get my dream going here. I cannot tell you how much that means to me. They are such decent human beings and really just good people who are interested in helping me out, and it's huge for me. I cannot tell you how much that means to me about all of them. They've all been just wonderful, and again, I thank the Cosmos for putting this together. I mean, yeah, sure, it's after the fact. It's many years after the fact, but I also look back and think, what would I have done with this if I was way younger? Would I have squandered this opportunity?
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of getting an opportunity after having sat back and really written so much material. I've written over 200 songs.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's impressive. And let me just say, that's, again, part of the reason I want to talk to you. Really, I had no idea who you are, but when I got the press release, I checked out the song right away because I thought, oh, wow, who's this Lisa G? Oh, wow, it says Carmine and James and, are on here. Okay, I'll go check it out. And then I thought, wow, what a great singer. I want to hear more of this.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that because, you always kind of wonder, especially from someone who's... most of their interest is a heavier sound.
Yeah.
So that means a great deal to me coming from you because I've looked at your history as well, and you are into the heavier music, as am I, by the way. I have for example, my absolute favorite bands are AC/DC,
amazing,
Aerosmith, Deep Purple. That's what I came up on. So that's what I always wanted to be. But then you hear my voice, and it's like, not gonna happen.
You work with what you got. Yeah, and you work with what you got as far as your voice and your talent, and you get some of these heavier players to play on your tracks. So again, that'll bring a certain element of that audience that you want to be part of to check you out. And see, that's the great thing. Like you're saying, you're getting to start late in life, but you know what? If this was the only song you ever released, I'll tell you what. At least you could say, you did it. You lived the dream somewhat.
Yes,
that's more of it.
Exactly, that's my feeling.
That's more than some people ever get to have, and I think it is a great story for that reason that you could have gave up, but you kept fighting, and you even go back to when you're telling me that when you first got started, you were singing in cover bands. That's the story of most people, to be honest, before they get their first big break. So like going back to the cover band days, who were some of the bands that you were singing?
Well, that's kind of a funny story. I was in a band for many years called Broken Hip because, we felt we were a little older, so
okay.
That would be kind of a funny name.
Yeah, cool.
But, and really we're not all that old, but compared to the cover bands that we saw around us, there's 17-year-olds out there playing. We were playing local festivals and stuff like that, and it was a little different. We actually had really great response because there's a lot of people our age who really want to hear the music from our generation. But with that said, we tried to be eclectic and go kind of across the spectrum. So I remember when we first started out, there really were no other bands out there at the time.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to say like 2006-ish or something, 2007.
Yeah.
So it wasn't all that crazy long ago, but at that time in my area, there simply were not a lot of female-fronted cover bands. And of course, I'm playing bass in this band, I'm playing guitar and keyboards, etc. My brother was in the band, he played keyboards, etc. But we tried to come up with a very interesting varieties, and it had to be stuff that was in a certain vocal range that I didn't hit the notes, but it had to be really high. So I did Led Zeppelin.
Wow.
I did, again, Deep Purple, AC/DC, a lot of AC/DC. And the female stuff, there was not a lot of great stuff out there.
Yeah, so because if you stick with just the female stuff, you're kind of limited to like, maybe, Tina Turner or, Hart, Stevie Nicks, Pat Benatar.
Yes. I did do Hart. The Stevie Nicks stuff, that her vocal range is different from mine, but we used to do Crazy on You, we would do Barracuda. And probably the favorite song that I did, which my brother and I sang together, was the Rolling Stones song, Gimme Shelter.
Oh, wow.
Because the female part in that one is probably, in my opinion, the most iconic female rock vocal part of in all history.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a challenge to be able to do it, but I just loved doing that song, even though, the vocal part in that song for a female is limited. Yeah. But the part that I got to sing was just mind-blowing. So much fun. That's the kind of stuff that we did. But for the most part, as you said, that it was kind of limited. So Heart, and we'd do an occasional, Blondie song, something a little bit heavier. But most of the stuff was all... and we did some Aerosmith stuff again.
Oh, cool! I would love to hear about that. Now
oriented, stuff where the singers sang in a higher range.
Yeah,
but it was fun, but it still was not my love.
I gotta tell you, I would have loved to hear you doing a version of Barracuda, as you mentioned. I mean, that as far as hard, I mean, they're often thought of as hard rock or pop band or even classic rock these days. But I mean, that's probably about as metal as they ever got.
Oh yeah. No, it's out there. It's out there somewhere on the internet.
And you mentioned AC/DC.
There is footage of it out there.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad I did it. It was a great experience because, once again, it's very difficult to be an original musician because people don't want to hear original music. It's the strangest thing. Back in the day, people were interested in it. Now people, all they want to do is it's almost like going to a wedding. People want to see cover music, or they want to see the bands that they grew up with.
I mean, that's why if you can get people checking out a song like Love Thing, that's great these days because you're absolutely right. Back in 2000, the tribute band scene wasn't even the big business it is today. I mean, how things have changed, and in many ways, the great thing about YouTube is you can kind of put your video out there and a lot more people are going to be able to check it out. It's just a matter of getting people to know about it. And now you mentioned AC/DC. What another great, classic rock band. I got to tell you, that the latest album they put out, I think, is, I dare say, the best thing they've done since, Back in Black, and that's really saying something.
Well, I am actually a fan of the original lineup with Bonnie the Scott.
There you go.
That I believe I was supposed to marry. Really mad at the universe that it didn't work out that way. But with this, I saw them on their first U.S. tour, and it changed my life.
Oh, I believe.
I cannot tell you what that band meant to me, and still does. I mean, my absolute favorite album of all time is Power Age, and I love them, but they really were exactly what I wanted to be musically, and it just never worked out that way.
Wow.
But that was where my heart was musically, and that was what I was always striving to do. But as a result, it ended up with stuff that I tried to make sound like AC/DC, and it came out sounding like Love Thing.
I mean, that's a great story right there. I mean, the fact that, you sing like you do, and you grew up on all this great, hard rock. I mean, wow. That's just a great story. And, here's one for you. I mean, you're talking about how much you love Bon Scott. I mean, it's funny because just as, the last thing I ever did with Bon was Highway to Hell, and then they have this... Yeah. You think AC/DC, they're over without Bon Scott. They go on to bigger, just continue to be successful with Back in Black. They didn't even miss a beat.
Yeah, what they did was amazing. And I love Brian Johnson, do not get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Adore Brian Johnson.
But see,
I love AC/DC with Brian Johnson. But to me, it's a different band. You know, it's something very different. It's not the same.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have the same vibe, I guess I should say. And again, I adore Brian Johnson, as did Bon Scott, right? Because he copied his sound from Brian Johnson, which is how they ended up with it.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to appreciate, in every possible respect, both versions of that band. And absolutely the fact that Angus and Malcolm were able to not only pick up the ball and keep running with it, but they scored a touchdown with their lineup. And they continue. It's just amazing that,
I tell you, if you've heard the new AC/DC album that they put out last year, the amazing thing...
I have not heard it yet.
But you got it. If you're an AC/DC fan, I mean, and what's really amazing is they recorded, of course, after Malcolm, died, but he was involved with a lot of the writing. He wrote a lot of the riffs on the album, and the guy they have now is his nephew Stevie. But in any event, even though he doesn't play a lick on any of these songs, you can feel Malcolm's influence because he was involved in the writing. It's just amazing. And
Malcolm was really. I mean, obviously both wrote together.
Yeah.
But Malcolm was
the backbone.
the solo
Yeah.
band.
Yeah. And that's why you can kind of see. I think part of Angus obviously died with his big brother.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's
What a
why.
shame.
Yeah. AC/DC. I mean, this is the big question, and it's a hard one. Highway. Highway to Hell or Back in Black. I mean, it's another like Deep Purple. I don't know. This is hard for me. Like Machine Head or Burn. I love both.
Machine Head that's the one.
Yeah.
That's probably another one of the greatest albums of all time.
Oh yeah.
And I was very lucky because I have actually seen Ian Gillan live. I saw him. What I mean is outside of Deep Purple.
Yeah,
I saw
solo.
him when he played Jesus Christ in Jesus Christ Superstar when I was a little kid. And I got very lucky to see that because, wow, that guy can sing.
And Deep Purple,
in my opinion, is again in probably the top 5 vocalists of vocalists of all time. His voice and of course I've seen him with Deep Purple many times too.
Yeah.
But wow, yeah, Machine Head, that's the album.
I tell you, Deep Purple, all the guys in the band I love, but Richie Blackmore, he's one of my all-time guitar heroes. I mean,
oh yeah.
You ever seen what that guy does on stage? He's crazy. But I love John Lord too. I mean, the late great John Lord. I mean, when people tell me keyboards suck and they don't belong in rock music, I say, you look at what Deep Purple did, and then you tell me that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at, in particular, I mean, there's so much John Lord stuff that's amazing, but Highway Star, that is the rock keyboard song of all time.
Oh.
I mean, it's just that keyboard solo that he does. I think anybody who can ever appreciate keyboards in rock, and of course we've got, the Rick Wakemans.
Oh, of course, he's still around.
Keith Emerson's, obviously, but that's prog stuff is a little bit different. But with respect to Lord's, oh my, I mean, that particular solo in Highway Star, I mean, I can hear every note in my head right now. Yeah. It is so iconic, that solo. And I agree with you to say if there's anybody out there saying that keyboards don't belong in rock, you got to look at Deep Purple.
And Lisa, talking about the company, the company you're in, you mentioned Rick Wakeman. I just got to tell people out there listening to this, you may not have heard yet who Lisa G is, but she just so happens to have the same publicist as people like Rick Wakeman, Steve Lukather, Michael Schenker, Rick Wakeman. So you're in good company there. And again, a publicist like that, he must hear something in you, when he's used to working with these big name, musicians. So I think you're in really good company,
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I, again, music is a labor of love for me. And so to have somebody like you tell me that you appreciate what I've done, it just means the world to me.
And before we let you go today, Lisa, I guess final part of the interview I'd like to ask you about is, so we kind of talk about, how you got your start in the business and you've been working in different capacities. Now, what was at the point where, you finally got to a point or somebody kind of nudged you, say, Lisa, you're a really great singer, and that's what you should kind of focus on, but you know what? Why don't you try writing your own original music? I mean, were you kind of always doing it, but you just never really had the chance until eventually to show it to somebody and get that opportunity?
Well, it's kind of the exact opposite. I had people fighting me my whole life saying, why are you wasting your time writing music? You should be playing cover music because there are wedding bands out there, that'll pay you. And I'm like, but it's not about the money. This is my art. It's the same as a painter. What, you have a painter out there repainting a Picasso? No, the painter's going to paint their own stuff. But I had people fighting me for years. And so finally I gave up. And I remember the reason that I decided to concentrate recently on my original stuff, and when I say recently, 10 years ago, was I was at this little party it was something called an awards show for the local cover bands. And I sat at a table, and all of the cover bands were all around me, but there was no place to sit, so I got there late. And I sat down at a table full of young kids. They were aged 16 to 20, I think.
Wow.
And they were an all-original band. And they were a heavy band. They were called Down and Dirty. Nice bunch of kids.
Wow.
And they were telling me that they do all this original stuff. They don't do covers. And they started talking to me, and I told them that I did originals. So they said, you know what? You need to go back and start working on your original music. You just forget this cover stuff.
Yeah,
and I said,
yeah.
You know what? You kids are right. I'm going to do that. And I did. And we're still friends, all of them.
I dig.
Tragically passed away.
Wow.
Young. But they... God bless young Joey. He was a killer drummer.
Wow.
But with that said, these kids really convinced me to consider doing my own music again, and if it weren't for them, it wouldn't be happening.
Well, I'll tell you, I love hearing that the younger generation is kind of encouraging the older generation there.
Indeed, yeah.
I mean, there's almost a song in that story.
I am so glad I ran into these kids.
And there's almost a song in that story. It'd be cool, like, if it went full circle to the point where you could have, them back you up on a track. That would be so cool, I think.
I would love that. That's actually like a really cool idea.
And you talk about the other guitar player on there, Donnie, that you've been working with all these years. See, I think when you get like a collaborator, a partner like that kind of really knows who you are as a vocalist. And you said that you guys have written many different types of songs. See, he's got to be kind of your muse, and he, you inspire one another, and that's got to be a great feeling,
It is, and as I mentioned, he is so varied. He is. I don't know if it's a concern of his or whether he just hears this in his head. I'm gonna have to ask him one of these days. But I'll hand him 2 or 3 songs that to me sound very alike. What I'll do is I'll play them on an acoustic guitar and hand them to him, and they come back with these wild guitar parts. It's like, wow, I did a song called RSVP that he made kind of like an 80s pop song, and it's one of my favorite songs that he's done. But then there was a song I did called Cult Life, and it had this sort of ethereal feel to it. And then I've recently done a song called High Fashion Model, and he made it this just kind of driving, kind of almost a country rock tune. He's just so talented in terms of his ability to hear any kind of different style in something that, in my opinion, I gave him 3 songs that sounded almost identical, and he really just turned it into something full and different and varied. And then you add to that somebody like, well, in the case of Penny Arnoff, he would turn the songs into something different rhythmically. But he would also say, you might want to do X or Y with the vocals here, you may want to do X or Y with the bass or whatever. And he was also very helpful. He acted as quite a mentor with me as well. But then get to Carmine, and Carmine, who was also a vocalist, but also, a producer of hit songs. And what he did, it's just, I keep sort of climbing a ladder, but the ladder is it goes both vertically and horizontally. And to have the ability to work with all these crazy professionals who are just crazy talented.
Yeah,
I am so lucky because I get all of their influence in subtle ways, in not so subtle ways, and I could not be luckier.
Yeah, and Carmine too.
And every one of them.
Carmine, I don't know if you're aware. He comes kind of from a musical family. I don't know. His little brother. I don't know if you're aware. He's played some pretty big gigs himself. With Ronnie James Dio and Black Sabbath. So
Vinny? Oh God, yeah, I'm a huge Dio fan.
Yeah, have you ever seen? They put out this album They got this band called A Piece. It started off as a Strum War thing with him and Vinny, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I watched the Drum Wars. There's so much fun, and that's kind of the other aspect to all these folks is that they all have a side of them that goes sort of beyond the musical.
Oh yeah,
it's fun and playful, and they interact with their fans, and I just appreciate that. And by the way, that's why I know them all.
Yeah.
Because they are kind enough to listen to their fans and to talk to their fans, and it's just such a cool, I think, time in our history that we have access to. I mean, think about it. Yeah. There was a time
when I
remember I recently saw Pat Benatar at a local festival.
Wow.
And at the end of the show, she was surrounded by security so thick that you couldn't even see her leave.
Wow.
But it was because she came from the era where she doesn't necessarily interact with fans. And I'm going to give her this. Being a female artist is very different from being a male artist. But still, it broke my heart because I wanted to talk to her so much. I wanted to go talk to her. She was such a huge part of my musical upbringing.
Oh, yeah.
But I couldn't because that's not how nobody wanted to interact with me at that particular concert.
And like you said, a guy like
but
Carmine.
Then you go see a Vanilla Fudge one, and I got to talk to Carmine a piece. This was like the biggest deal. I went to a drum clinic and saw Kenny Arnold. I got to talk to Kenny Arnold. I got to a Fogerty concert, and I got to meet James Lomenzo. It was just, it's a different time in our history, and I am so grateful to have these opportunities.
Yeah, and even you like you say, you maybe not think, that like metal, hard rock guys would be as friendly, like, and so open and willing to and upfront with their fans, but a lot of them really are. Even Carmine and his brother Vinny, like you're saying, they have kind of this comedic thing going as well, where they're like joke around and like they even they even argue about how you're supposed to pronounce their name, but that kind of is what they're known for, in addition to their musical ability.
Oh yeah, and I love it, and that's that's why they have the fans they have, aside from their monster music talent, which I'm sure is a little part of that component, but they are so much fun.
And Carmine,
that's the whole thing. That's something I strive for, is to be all of that. I want to be. I mean, I love interacting with people. That's been probably the most fun part of this for me, is on my social media, is talking to people. I've met so many fun people online, and thanks to the pandemic, unfortunately, I haven't been able to meet them. But I hope to someday start touring where I can actually meet these people who I've been talking to online for the last couple of years. It's really, it just gives me such great joy to talk to people, not just about the music, but about their lives. I'm interested in these people. I love making friends. It's kind of a big deal for me.
Yeah, Carmine, another thing I've seen recently about him on social media, for his age, he looks really, really young, but recently he kind of decided, I'm going to quit dyeing my hair, just let it go gray. And I remember seeing a picture of him, like, oh, wait a minute, oh, that's Carmine, oh, he looks different, but, hey, it looks cool, yeah. And he's one of those guys that, people, if that's what he wants to do, they accept it, And so I dig the
fact. Well, he's a legend. He can do whatever.
Yeah, exactly. At this point, Well, Lisa, I've really enjoyed getting to know you. And you were saying, are there any plans right now? Because how are things where you're from? You're from New York, is that right?
No, I'm actually from Chicago.
Chicago, okay. So what's it like in Chicago, like with COVID and that? I mean, is everything starting to open up, or... I mean, have you guys really been affected?
It is, but here's the problem, and this is a big thing for me, is that, I think you have to exercise a certain amount of care. Yeah. And my biggest thing is that I don't want to get sick and then give it to somebody else. Yeah. So I'm very nervous about it. I had a friend who actually gave it to her 90-year-old father. So, I'm trying to be a little bit careful, especially as an artist. You're going to be in contact with a lot of people. So I want to see kind of a little more control. Recently I saw that there's a new variant that's apparently really virulent and kind of dangerous. So I want to be a little careful. I'm one of these people who wants to kind of sit back and see what's going to happen before I make any kind of solid plans to get out there and do something. But the very moment I can, I am on it. I want to tour. I want to go out and meet people. I am just so excited about that actually happening. And I know we're heading there. We're getting there. That's great to hear. So hopefully it'll be sooner than later.
So do you have a targeted release date for the EP that you're working on?
No, not for the EP. What we're doing is Carmine has a very interesting vision for this. Mm-hmm. He wants to, do it sort of how they used to do it before, where you'd release a song and see what kind of interest there is, and then you'd release another one, and then, like back in the day, what we used to do is you'd get a single, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is a great song, I can't wait to find the album, and there's no album yet, so you're looking, and you're looking, and you're looking. So we're going to be releasing stuff, and then hopefully soon, we have another song coming right on the heels of this one, and I think you're going to see that it's got a much heavier rock feel than the last one.
Well, I can't...
again, this is all Carmine influenced and Carmine produced, and I'm just so excited about it.
But I'm sure we're going to love it,
behind that we're working on.
And
we're going to get this together probably in the next month or two, and hopefully this song and the next song and the one after that will generate enough interest for people to buy the whole CD.
And so,
if you look at the way people do it now, everybody wants to buy a single. Nobody wants to buy an album.
Yeah, I'm an old.
Generate enough interest for exactly that. So people might be interested in hearing more than just one song.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old school like you in the sense that I miss the days of being able to. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, and I mean, there's really not a record store you can go to. A lot of people are like, what's a record store? It used to be a place, folks, where you go and buy music. I mean, even you go to the local Target, unless you're looking to get the Beach Boys' greatest hits. I mean, I got to get everything off of Amazon these days. But hey, I'm into music, and I miss the days of, reading who wrote the songs and who guest stars and that.
Right.
So that it wasn't an art form, and people really are missing that. But hey, I'll support
the other part of that, just to stick a quick interjection into that, is don't you love the deep cuts? Don't you miss that?
Yeah.
You would get an album, and it's not necessarily the song you hear on the radio, but it's like, wow, this song is just the best song. I love this song. And it's sort of like, it's kind of your little secret.
I mean,
that's one of the things that I also want to do is to make sure that I've got a ton of material, and I plan to, I'm not going to stop anytime soon. So I want people to hear the stuff that's not necessarily, the top 10 or whatever. I think musical taste is very varied, and we have to give people kind of variety, right? And the only way to find that is by having more than one song. And
let me ask you, in regards to Love Thing, how happy are you with the response you got so far? Are you at all surprised, or it's about what you thought it would be?
I'm shocked, actually. Yeah, I'm getting a tremendous response, and I guess the thing is that I really so much have Carmine to thank for that, not just for, the musical ability, but he has been so encouraging and so helpful, and just getting it out there and helping me find the ways to share it. He's just been such an amazing partner in this picture. So,
and that's gonna be.
I'm really surprised. It's been super fun.
And that's gotta be a great feeling, hooking up with a guy like that, and you see he's had his own legendary career, which is like, I think that would be a person I would listen to. I mean, he really is kind of managed his own career over the years, and look at what he's been able to do for himself.
Yes, exactly. No, he's the man in every possible respect. And again, I'm so lucky to be able to work with him. Just really lucky.
Yeah, and so Lisa, I'll end with this. Can people find you on Facebook or do you have other social media sites they can find you on?
Absolutely, yeah. They can find me on Facebook, apparently on Instagram. I'm not too familiar with Instagram, but apparently I'm out there.
Yeah.
And YouTube. I have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
And that has all my videos from the last 5 years. And, there's probably one other thing I should mention is that I ride a motorcycle.
Oh, cool.
And a couple of my videos have me riding my motorcycle. I've been doing that since I was legally allowed to do it. Actually, a little before I was legally allowed to do it. Wow. But I own a 1980 Harley Davidson lowrider and a 2016 Indian Chief.
Wow, how cool is that?
Well, they are featured in my videos.
Well, I'm going to go check the YouTube and that, and I'm going to hit you up on Facebook later. But I'll tell you what, Lisa, I'm going to continue to follow you. We got to do this again. I really enjoyed getting to know you because, like I said, I think
I would love to, and I've enjoyed getting to know you too. And I again really appreciate you taking the time to talk.
Yeah, and just in case you're interested, the interview will be going up in early July. I'll be sure to let Chip know, and I can reach out to you on Facebook now, I guess. I'll let you know the minute it goes up, and at that point, you're welcome to post on any of your sites.
Fantastic. Well, again, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It's been a
anytime. So let's stay in touch. You take care, okay? Bye-bye.
You too.